Are you ready for the final chapter of our Unspoken Words series? We gather to face these truths head on. It will be packed with a delightful panel full of knowledge. So please stay tuned for Control, Delete, and Heal, where we will finish our journey for the unspoken truth on Take It to the Grave, the Unspoken Words. I'm your host, VL Henry. Hi, Sam. We've started recording. Welcome in.
All right, thank you.
Most of us in the culinary world, there's like a mantra. There's a couple sayings. There's two quotes by probably two of my favorite chefs. The one is, cooking is an expression of the land where you are the culture of that place. And that's Anthony Bourdain. And the second one is, food is a story of who we are, where we come from, and where we're going. And that's Dominique Crenn. So those two people, it resonates with me. And these words remind us that food tells a story. We all can sit here and talk about how food has told us a story, right? But in the culinary world, there are also unspoken stories, right? Stories of struggle, silence, and survival. Behind the plates and the perfection of so many of us trying to make that perfect plate, too many chefs, line cooks, dishwashers, and servers are fighting a battle that no one sees. The truth is sobering, and the culinary industry faces some of the highest rates of burnout, substance abuse, and suicide, right? And sometimes men, we'll talk about men, my father, my brother, and all that. Sometimes men are often told, tough it out in the kitchen, don't, come on, be a man, man up. And they're actually dying at a greater risk of suicide. And then women, women in the culinary world, especially women of color, carry a double burden, navigating harassment, discrimination, pay inequities, while trying to prove themselves to their male-dominant spaces that they're just as good. And then you have minority workers, but I also want to add Zoomers and millenniums of any race, because they're young. Not all millenniums, but some. They're young. A lot of them don't have health care, right? A lot of them are working and they're not being able to pay for mental health. So we have to think about them too. A lot of people are suffering because of the lack of health care and the systemic inequities that worsens the mental health risk. So, and I don't want to talk about statistics, because I know a lot of people watching this, I don't want them to think it's a numbers thing. I want it to be gritty. It's about people. It's about our colleagues. It's about friends, family members who didn't speak their pain until it was too late. And it's about stories taken to the grave, unspoken words that we can no longer hear. So tonight is such it's a perfect crescendo to the ending. It's a final chapter of our Unspoken Words series. We've had several of them. And we gather here to face the truth head on, not with the shame, but with courage, compassion, and hope. And because even in our hardest conversation, there is power in that speaks with us that was once silenced. And sometimes the words we share, especially maybe tonight, we could save maybe one life. So, people didn't come here to hear me talk. They came here to hear this magnificent panel that we have. And I want to introduce the panel, and I'm so thankful that they're here. We're going to start off with our clinical expert, which is Mike Thacker. Mike is on our panel. So Mike, I want you to tell a little bit about yourself and your background.
Okay,
Mike?
now can you hear me?
There you go, Mike. Go ahead and tell
All
us a
right.
little bit. Welcome aboard and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me on. Well, I come from a little bit of a unique background. I spent most of my life racing motocross, supercross stuff. I went pro and raced all over Europe, Canada, and the US. And I got a later start on the school side of things. I just finished up my bachelor's in psychology from Capella University, hoping to start graduate work this coming January. And I spent a lot of years in independent study, mostly centered around Christian theology and apologetics, and as well as some philosophy intermeshed within there. So it's really kind of helped as I explore psychology. And my aim is not really in clinical psychology as much as it is I'm hoping to go on to become a professor and researcher. So more on the teaching side, and integrating more of the philosophical um, nature elements within there. And I grew up in a split home. I was actually born into a split home, and so I had two different ways of viewing the world, I would say, in both of those homes, and I had to constantly contend, figuring out which one had the correct view, and that was always fun. And I think that kind of helped fuel some of my interest in, well, rooted within the Christian domain, but ultimately also in philosophy and psychology, and it really sparked curiosity to understand, what are the correct ways of perceiving the world, I would say. And I was diagnosed with depression a few years ago, and I really have dealt with it most of my life. And it's a tough battle. So this kind of goes right with what you're talking about on the suicide side of things, because that's generally where it's rooted in is depression, oftentimes, as well as stress and being overwhelmed. And I actually just got done writing my capstone for Capella University for my bachelor's on the topic of depression. I had to narrow it down, so I narrowed it down to young men. And you were saying that young men do commit suicide at a higher rate than women. And that is true, about 3.5 times more. And I kind of focus on modernity and that of urban living and the rapid pace of technological advancements, um, and a loss of meaning, underlying fundamental meaning that we used to have rooted in tradition and religion, things of that nature, that are not really available to young men, so to speak, anymore. And we trying to develop uh, our own sense of meaning, which is a very difficult thing for an individual to do. We used to have that embedded with culture, and we don't have that quite as much anymore. So there's a few different things, as well as evolutionarily speaking. We evolved in nature, out in the elements, physically active, eating wholesome, good foods, and now we no longer participate in that. We're in the confines of indoors constantly, out of the sunlight, eating processed foods, constant gaming, no real sense of direction, unfortunately. That's at least part and parcel due to some of the issues that we see with depression and suicide rates, I believe.
Wow, thank you so much, Mike. I appreciate it. What you're saying, I read up on your capstone, and we'll definitely be talking later on to our episode in October. I appreciate what you're doing.
Okay.
Next up is we have Katherine Miller, and I'm very excited to have her here, an author and advocate. But I'm not gonna do the introduction. Katherine Miller, go ahead, and thank you so much, ma'am.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. It's such an important topic, especially. So I have a multi-decade career that sits at the intersections of philanthropy and advocacy. And I work primarily with nonprofit organizations and family foundations and global philanthropists to find solutions to some of the intractable problems that plague us. And I spent about 12 years working directly with the chef community, as the executive director of the Chef Action Network, and then as the first vice president of impact at the James Beard Foundation. And I will say that one of the number one requests for information, programming, support was in the areas of mental health. The culinary community, it's a place where a lot of people um, go because maybe they're unlikely to have jobs in other communities. Maybe they're artistic. Maybe they don't quite feel like they fit in an office job. But it is also a place where people regularly play with sharp knives in hot kitchens, at high speeds under a lot of pressure, and a lot of pressure to please customers and produce perfection at every turn. And so it's sort of, it is one of the industries with the highest rates of accidents, the highest rates of harassment, the highest rates of substance abuse. It's in the top 5 of all of those. And so it is a place where we don't talk about it as much as we should. We don't talk about the stressors. We don't talk about prevention. We don't talk about counseling or solutions. And so I'm happy to get into that with you all today. But and so thanks for hosting this important conversation during this very important month.
Thank you so much, Katherine. Next up is I want to call, with much respect, Executive Chef Sam Spencer, who is my ride or die. He has been with me on the second episode, and from that point on, he has been amazing. He reposts my videos. He pushes the message, and I thank you, sir. And you have been pivotal to me wanting to do more, and you've lit something in me as well by you being so much involved in this. So with any further ado, I'd like to present to you Executive Chef Sam Spencer.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chef Samuel Spencer. I'm a hospitality professional, so when I'm not in the industry, I like to give back to my local community colleges and the high schools and the post-secondary as well. And I just my time in the industry and working in hospitality is a highly stressed industry, demanding, and you see a lot of substance abuse. You see a lot of drug abuse, and and suicide is a high rate throughout the hospitality industry as well. When you're dealing with the demand of the industry and working in a high pressure scene, it can take a toll on you mentally and physically.
That's right. Thank you, sir, so much. And now the one and only Chef Diureka, who I hold close to my heart. We got to know each other working at Triumph, and she's amazing. And she's been in part 1 and part 2 of Unspoken Words. Her and BSN Kara Harris, they were amazing. So Chef Diureka, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thank you, Chef, for having me back. These are definitely hard acts to follow. I definitely appreciate being on this panel with such wealths of knowledge, including yourself, Chef V. But with that being said, I am Chef Diureka. I am a graduate with my baking and pastry degree, as well as my culinary associates. I'm currently in school for my food and beverage entrepreneurship bachelor's, which I am almost done. So y'all pray for me. I'm ready to be done. I do a lot of private chef work. I teach classes, just kind of teaching people that say, oh, I can't cook or I can't bake. I love to take on those challenges because I do believe that anyone can cook, anyone can bake, on top of eating to live versus living to eat. I really do believe that that conversation needs to be heavily addressed with the way we eat and what we put into our bodies. And just to tie myself into this conversation, I struggle with depression as well. I have in the past have had suicide attempts. And just I am an advocate for opening my mouth or even being a listening ear when I see signs or hear certain things that might trigger me knowing how that would feel, and if that person might be on their last leg, if you will. So thank you again for having me here, and I'm excited to be a part of the conversation for this second episode.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having the courage and the rawness to speak your truths. I have a two-part question, and it's an icebreaker. And the way I'm going to do it is I'll present the question. Katherine, you can answer it. Then we'll piggy to Chef Sam, Chef Diureka, and then Mike will follow up. The icebreaker is this. When you hear of the word healing, what does it mean to you personally? That's the first question. The second question is, when you hear the phrase hidden struggles, what comes to mind for you in the contents of the culinary industry? Now, Mike, you'll use it for your own personal and the field that you're in. But I'd like to start it off with Katherine.
Sure, thank you. And Diureka, thank you so much for your honesty and your willingness to share your own challenges with the audience. I think it is always good for people to hear that that they are not alone, and that people that they respect and look up to have struggles. I think it's so that's probably the answer to the second part of the question, which is like the hidden piece within the culinary industry. I think the hidden piece we don't it's hospitality is meant to be a good time. It's meant to be a good time front facing. It's meant to be a good time in the back of the house. You're there to make people feel better about their lives or to give them a place to celebrate, to mourn, to heal. And that doesn't leave a lot of space for the folks that are servicing that, right? And it doesn't give a lot of space to the day-to-day struggles that people are facing. And those day-to-day struggles could be, I don't have enough money to get bus fare. They could be, I lost $1 million contract. I mean, it across the spectrum of culinary, they are there, and I think they are hidden, and maybe even encouraged to tamp down because of what this community is expected to deliver on a daily basis. Um, and to your first question, I think, healing is, when I think of healing, I think of both a process, right? You don't heal overnight. Oftentimes the body heals before the mind or the heart does, right? Uh, so it's a process, and we sort of, to use the cliche, we kind of have to trust the process. But in order to do that, we have to put that one foot in front of the other, right? And so when I think of healing, I also think it's taking that first step either to self-forgiveness or forgiveness to people who caused us harm, or forgiveness to the society that we live in. But there are we always have to take at least one first step, and for some it's forgiveness. So I think healing's a process, and I think that the unspoken truths about the hospitality industry is that it's expected to deliver something, an unrealistic version of the world. And that causes challenges for the people who work in it every single day.
Chef Sam?
Okay, I'll say, that's a strong topic. And I just say, from my experience in the hospitality industry and, just in the workforce, sometimes people use their work or their job as healing. So sometimes, depending on what you're going through outside of work, when you do get to your job, when you do get to school or something that you love to do, to take your mindset away from it. So I can say, your job or your work or your schooling or your education factor can be your healing. Because I know a lot of times, if I was going through something mentally and things like that, if I was in school, when I get to school, just being there just took me away from my personal issues. And and sometimes, as far as in the work now, sometimes people use their job as healing because whatever they're going facing at home or with their family, with their kids, when they get a chance to get out of that environment and get to their job, they'll heal. And I would say, sometimes the struggle, when the healing can meet the struggle, it's like, if you having issues at home and you having issues on the job, that's when you being mentally defeated because you have no outlet to get through beyond that part. So, I think one can benefit the other, but it just, try to find that best of both worlds when even if you're in a day-to-day workforce facet, to just, hey, this all I know, it got me this far. When I'm doing this, when I'm baking or when I'm doing anything of those facets, it take me out of my element for the moment to feel is healed. And you can't, then you just can't take that struggle to abuse.
Chef Diureka?
Yes. So I agree. I want to kind of piggyback off of the last thing that Chef Samuel said is taking that struggle into abuse, because oftentimes it's very easy for us to kind of sit in our struggle and really not because of any fault of our own. It's just it's just something when you don't have that help to kind of pull yourself out, or you don't have that know-how because you're in that darkness, it's kind of hard to see the light, right? So I think playing on the side of healing, it's finding those things that kind of bring you joy. As Chef Samuel said, maybe being in your element, or being at school, or being around friends. And just for me personally, I've found that over the years, healing for me just means speaking up. I am I'm very introverted, very introverted. I think some of it is kind of learned behavior, and some of it is just kind of by nature. But when I'm around people that I feel safe around, I know how to have a good time, kind of cut up and joke or whatnot, because I don't feel judged. But at the same time, I've found that it's been a hindrance for me, because if I feel like I'm not feeling protected, then I'm not going to speak up. And in time, that's going to become an explosion, something that was little that could have been handled along the way turns into something, very catastrophic. And next thing you know, it's just, it's a snowball effect. So for me personally, that healing just means opening my mouth, speaking up at what I feel would be the right moments. And ultimately, that goes into asking for help as well. I'm not a prideful person, but I've just kind of been being raised in the community I was raised in. It's just like it's almost a stigma for asking for help. You kind of just, strap up your boots to do it yourself. So that's pretty much what I would think for those questions.
Thank you so much, Mike. Michael, go ahead. Now, Mike, do you like it? Is it Michael or Mike? Mike, are you muted?
There we go. All right.
Is it, is
Yeah,
it,
no, either or,
okay.
whatever you prefer on that.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, when I think of healing, I think of uh, unification. So I would say the integration of the various parts of the self. And what I mean by that is getting to know yourself better. And oftentimes that happens by challenging yourself. So you could say in part that struggles. Um, and in the integration, assimilation of novel information, new information that you can learn, like going to school and things of that nature, helps you not only learn more about whatever it is that you're exploring, but also helps you learn more about yourself at the same time. And so then you can take that information and those challenges and start trying to analyze your own behavior and your own thoughts and why you think certain things and try to work those out as best you can. Are those thoughts accurate? Is that the way you're perceiving yourself? Is that an accurate perception? And perhaps you should change that as far as not yourself, so to speak, but maybe your perception of yourself or your perception of other people and perception of reality. And that happens by integrating that new information, assimilating that new information over the course of time, because then you start um, trying to figure out the best way to explain this. It will begin to rewire your brain little by little as you assimilate that new information. You'll be able to understand how you're acting, what you're thinking, and what other people are thinking and how they're acting. And it actually helps you develop more empathy towards yourself as well as others. You start perceiving. I know it's done it for me over the course of time with learning more about psychology and even in my theological studies and philosophy studies of understanding the reason people do what they do and the way they think. And sometimes you start actually kind of feeling bad for people, and whenever they do certain things, you're not mad at them. That certain judgments or discriminatory things that they have against you, it's like that's because of the way that they grew up, or that's the way that they um, inherited, even genetically to a certain degree. And so that helps transform you little by little. That's akin to the idea of what Carl Jung um, proposed with the process of individuation. It's a gradual integration of the various parts of yourself that makes you into a unified whole, not perfected, but a unified whole person. And you're able to perceive life in a holistic manner. Um, to understand yourself and others in life. And I love the way Sam had talked about not abusing the struggles. And that's exactly right, because there has to be a balance as you integrate novel information and you challenge yourself. You can't constantly keep doing it. You have to have times for rest. And in times of rest, and we know from psychological literature that, when you rest, your brain, when you rest and you sleep, your brain is able to form new memories and integrate that knowledge that you had learned. And so when you have that balance between the two of challenging yourself as well as resting and having fun and sleeping, you start becoming a functional individual, at least in part. And you'll be able to unify yourself little by little. So that's my take on that.
Wow, Mike, thank you so much. I appreciate it. I'm actually you're helping me with my counseling by I'm getting like a quick study from you, just listening some of the information that you tell me. I appreciate it. Next, we're going to go over background and culture, and these are going to be direct questions to individual people, so it won't be everyone answering. This is to you, Chef Sam. The culinary world is known for long hours, high pressure, and a tough it out mentality. How has this culture shaped you, and what you've seen in your own kitchen?
Okay, from the demands of the hospitality industry and long hours, it's one of those things. Say, it's what you say. You put the work in, it's rewarding. So I always, been the one to say, putting the hours in, getting it done. It just become a secondary mindset if you feel true and passionate about what you really want to do. So it's just saying, I'm investing this time into not just now, but into my future. And so it's until one day, you'll reap the benefits of what you put in to your career. So, but I mean, if you can't find that, say, downtime or outlet time, or just to kind of detach yourself away from something you love or passionate about, that's when it can become, say, dangerous or become toxic because you so embedded into doing this or working those 80 hours a week or working those 70-hour weeks. And then, when time comes and you slow down, it's like, wow, I don't know what to do with myself. I'm not used to having a full day off. I'm not used to having 2 days off. And then that's when you can kind of just start, going into, you know, am I the chef I used to be? I'm the person I used to be. Do I still have it? But I mean, with myself now as I grown in the industry, it used to be, like I say now, it's not all about me. It's all about the team. And going into the day, like, what can we do? Because if we all come together and work as a team, everybody can leave with some sense of a mindset of not being mentally and physically drained. Then when you get home to your family, you have nothing to give them because you've been so beat up at work. So it just finding that, we'll say, work-life balance, but still getting the job done and learning how to spread the load around to where everybody can enjoy clocking out on the end. And sometimes just taking that ride home, that 10-15 minutes, whatever your ride is home, just to depress, forget about work. So when you do get to your family, you're not putting the energy that you've been through for the last 12 or 14 hours and disconnecting from them. So it just, like I said, it's all about, as you grow, find that work-life balance and just understand and it teach you as a person who you are. Because sometimes your work, you begin to have that work family, or you at work, and that's the culture environment that you build. So so it's just like, we in this together. We got a busy week, we got an impactful week. Let's get through it, and then we can take it from there.
Thank you so much, Chef. This is to Catherine. How do you see the cultural norms silencing conversation about mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I think for too long, this idea that hospitality is supposed to deliver a good time and that no one's allowed to share the downsides of their business, right? We all have to look super successful. We all have to look super performing really well on the line. There's and some of that has been a stigma, right? If you say anything, you're weak, right? I think we saw that stigma start to shift after Tony Bourdain's death by suicide. The conversation is renewed again around Chef Anne Burrell's death by suicide, right? These are inflection moments for the industry. So where that stigma at least there's a moment where folks can talk about it. I think, the thing that we're not really good at is continuing the conversation. Um, and that is largely, we're a fast-moving society. These things happen. So there might be a check-in, oh, how you doing? Or there might be an opportunity for, oh, I'm not doing so well today, right? But then things move quickly away from that, right? I'm really heartened by some of the things that I see happening in the industry, some real positive moves around it, but it really is a stigma related to weakness, and a stigma related to having to put forth a high, at least the performance of a highly productive, highly capable, um, employee or personality, and not giving them the space, or the resources to start to address that. And so there are, like I said, there are some inflection points that have happened over the last decade or so, but that stigma is still real.
That's so true. I mean, I came from a totally different industry. I was an operations manager for FedEx for in Atlanta, and I was in charge of the whole East Coast getting their freight on time. And I would work 16, 18 hours. And every day I was threatened that I was going to get fired. I had Zoom calls, meeting, and I almost got my finger cut off. And I was so afraid to leave my spot. I just took a shirt and wrapped my hand up, and I just went back and helped load containers because of the stigma of being a female manager. I didn't want to come off that I was weak, that I couldn't do the job, even though I was bleeding to death. But,
Yep.
so I agree with you completely. And I think these conversations, we need more of them. And the stigma, that's why I say we've got to delete the stigma. And especially culturally coming, I have a friend that's Italian, and we have a lot in common with our background. She comes from a family where you don't tell your business. You don't say anything, you don't talk about it. You just take it to the grave. And that's how my family was. So, but thank you, Katherine, for that.
Can I just say
Go ahead.
one quick thing about what you just said? We talk about this all the time in hospitality, that our hospitality is our family. Families hide dysfunction, right? These are not our families. They are our friends, they are our peers, they are our colleagues, right? But there is a bit about the stigma of weakness, or that we can deal with this, that is totally attached to this idea of, this is our family. This is my chosen family. This is my dysfunctional family. Right. And so I just, every time somebody says that about the hospitality industry, like, oh, they're the line is my family. It's like, it's not your family. These are your colleagues. These are your friends. These might be people that you support, but they're right. And when we start attaching that much sort of both emotion to it, but also it just disguises so many.
This conversation is only the beginning. This is our final episode, but broken down in two. We'll wind the circle with an incredible panel. Katherine Miller, author and advocate of At the Table, executive chef Sam Spencer, Chef Diureka, and Mike Thacker, a respected voice bringing powerful insight and perspective. I just want you to stay tuned. We have part 2 coming up, and it will be amazing. So please, watch, control, delete, and heal.